She might be on. Great. Hi, my name is Mark Batchelor. I'm Vice President of Community-Based Programs here with Cybercrime Support Network. We've done a couple of these workshops now with Helen, and we're loving it. And we like to share this stuff with you. We're going to talk today about online privacy. You probably deal a lot about that with your clientele, with HIPAA and with just professional boundaries. If you're on social media, you want to make sure that your social media privacy settings are set to a point where you're not intruded upon and there's no professional boundaries drawn. But we want to talk a little bit deeper than that. But I'll tell you about who we are first if you haven't seen us speak yet. Next slide. So we are a 501c3. We're national, based out of Ann Arbor, Michigan. I'm in Florida. Kim is in Rhode Island. We're on a mission to serve individuals and small businesses impacted by cybercrime, which in short means everybody, because we've all been impacted by this, whether we know it or not. We do that in 3 ways. The first being to help recognize a crime, and that would be the click there. To recognize a cybercrime, because it's not always immediate, as I'll show you, that we know that we're a victim. When it comes to something like the Equifax breach, it may take a long time before we know that something's happened, or in the terms of imposter scams, we may not recognize that that person is not who they seem until it's too late. We help people report. It's always very important to report. We help direct them to the right agencies to which to do so, whether it's the FTC, the Internet Crime Complaints Center, Better Business Bureau. There are a lot out there, and we want to make sure people find the right thing. And finally, help them recover. It's not always possible to get financial recovery, but you can recover data. You can recover emotional and psychological well-being after being victimized. So we want to help people do that. Next slide. I'm going to talk about cybercrime privacy, but I wanted to show you, since we're talking to a New Jersey group, I wanted to bring in some things that make it hit home to you a little bit. We were all impacted probably by the Equifax breach, and it hit 4 million people in New Jersey alone, 140 million total when that was all said and done. Wawa, I know New Jersey, I'm from New Jersey, love our Wawa. It was actually my first job when I was younger. 250 stores in the state had been hit by a breach in which 30 million payment records were stolen. Amtrak Guest Rewards was hacked and accessed, and Home Depot had a $17.5 million impact on customer data. So this is financially burdensome, just not only on the companies and the clients, but also on professional reputation. So if you are dealing with client records, you have to keep that in mind as well. Next slide. So I'm going to just ask 2 things. Are you concerned about privacy? And next. And what concerns you most about privacy? Is that we can unmute everybody for a second if we want, and just kind of take the tone of the room, see if there's anything that people feel strongly about.
Pop it in the chats if you.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
And you can do it as we keep talking as well, because I always love to know what's on people's minds.
Could you ask the 2 questions again, please, Mark?
Sure thing. Are you concerned about online privacy? Is it something that concerns you? And what are you most concerned about if you are? Because privacy covers a whole lot of things, from your data to your social media footprint, to your client records, to just your location, even where you are all the time. So what's that? Personal info, yeah. And that's a big thing. And that's where it's important when we're on social media to find those privacy settings and put them where we're comfortable. Judge for yourself who can access certain information and who cannot. And children's info as well. Yeah. Unfortunately, I have too many members of my family that I think post too much information about their children. to the point where it's recognized where they're going to be at certain times, and how often. And you want to kind of be cautious of something like that. Next slide, Kim. So here's a couple things here that I just put when it comes to personal data. It's not always criminal. It's important to remember that. Many companies collect information about you as part of a regular way of doing business, not just the Facebooks and Googles, but the Gap and Dunkin' Donuts, they're doing it as well. So I've kind of outlined here the red, yellow, and green of what there is. The red activities you see are clearly illegal. Cyber stalking, client breaches, especially when it comes to HIPAA. That's what you're talking about with your personal information, somebody breaking into an email account or an online database and stealing personalized data about yourself. And then identity theft, that's using that data for false means, whether it's to open an account or to gain access to information or money that they should not have. But then there's the middle ground, which can be both criminal or legal, depending on who's using it. Social engineering is the act of mining data, which is pretty much if you go back into somebody's Facebook feed and find out what their interests are, what their first school was, if they went to a high school reunion, finding out information about their birthday. Criminals use that information to, once they access your account, they can use that information to either gain trust or to access the account based on security passwords. But things like Instagram and Google use that information just to gather more information about what you might want to buy. Amazon is very famous for that as well. They use your purchasing data and they trail some of your internet breadcrumbs to determine what you're more likely to buy. And that's all perfectly legal, but we want to be able to know how to lock that down if we can. And that goes to data mining as well. That's finding out those morsels. Sometimes it's anonymized. They don't know who you are, but they know your profile and they know what you're likely to click on and what you're likely to buy. And in the green here, we have very legal things, the advertising, which I mentioned, location tracking, unfortunately, and trend analysis, just to determine, if people are buying things online, are they likely to buy it again next year? I'm going to talk more about location tracking, though, in future slides, because it's important to me, that one. In the next slide, you'll see all the ways in which, not all the ways, these are some of the more prominent ways that information is being tracked and who's tracking it. Some of them might be surprising to you. Smart TVs, for instance, appliances. It might be funny to say, yeah, my refrigerator can tell me when I'm out of orange juice, but it's up to you to determine whether the trade-off there to know you're out of orange juice without looking in the fridge is worth the data that you're giving, because appliances like, say, a thermostat or your light bulbs, somebody hack into that, they can tell your habits, they can tell when you're home, how often you're out, and things like that. So it really is invasive in your privacy and can be cause of problems. And then we saw, I think about 2 years ago, I think it was a Ring doorbell. I don't want to point out a specific company, but in the girl's bedroom, there was a camera, and the person used it to talk to the child in their bedroom. And that's terrifying. That's not only an invasion of privacy, that's, for a parent, something that's incredibly, incredibly scary. Oh, there's another one here. Something hacked without your knowledge, yeah. So all of these things, they seem innocuous, some of them, like your watch, your smartwatch. But if you have a Fitbit there, then some people can tell your location, or your health information is in there. So these are things that are very private to you that you may or may not know is being broadcast, via satellite to either wrongdoers or the companies collecting data on you. Next slide. And the way that they do that is through these fine print. Does anybody here read the long, tiny print on any of these things? Most likely not, because if you want to use an app or a website, you have to click yes, unfortunately, for the terms of service. And they can be confusing and misleading, but information is in there about how they use and share your privacy. So it's important to look at that. And then if you're unhappy with it, find the privacy settings and on that website and alter them to the way that you feel you're comfortable with. Unfortunately, not everybody uses the opt-in, which is you have to click a button and say, yes, use this. Some of them use opt-out, which means they automatically enroll you in these tracking and privacy agreements without you having the option to say anything, and you have to find it and opt yourself out, which is burdensome on the consumer. Next slide. So when it comes to that, just remember that free is not free. If you're using an app that's free, know what data is being collected, know what that data is used for, and what are the other types of tracking that they might be doing. Are they just using it for mailing lists, or are they tracking your habits, or are they tracking something more? There's a saying that says, if the product is free online, then you are the product, which means all that information that they're gathering on Facebook, that they're gathering on Google, is not free because they're selling those analytics about you and what you're doing to advertisers. They're selling it to marketing agencies. They're selling it to social engineers, basically whoever has money and interest can access that. Next slide. I'm going to talk a little bit about protecting yourself, and then Kim's going to follow up with some more tips. Next slide. In the interest, though, since we're talking about privacy, I am going to go counter to that and use some examples from my own phone. So bear with me here. I'm going to show you some screenshots of my own phone on the next slide. I took these captures from my iPhone. You want to check your privacy settings. Android phones work a little differently, but they all have the same, they might look different, but they all have the same basic functionalities. Determine what you really need to have active on there. When you look at privacy, there are things like your calendar, certain apps ask for access to your calendar, to your photos, to your Bluetooth. You want to go into each one of these, see who's using it, and either cut off service or limit service based on your comfort level. Next slide. So here I went into microphone. And these are all the apps that had asked to use my microphone and which ones I had turned off, because I don't see a need for Amazon to need my microphone. How many of you have ever gotten online ads for something you were talking about at home, or for a store you went in or didn't buy anything? That is problematic to me. So I shut all these things off. You know, I use it for Shazam because it's listens to music, and that's one of my favorite apps. It blows my mind. And of course, Zoom is using my microphone, so they have access to that. And next slide. Here's some more examples of location services. This is big. A lot of the companies have changed it now. So iPhone asks actually if you opt into tracking, but location services is when the app knows where you are and how often you're there and for how long. On iPhone, you can use those settings by changing it to never while using ask and always. You see, I have nothing set to always. There's nothing I think needs to know where I am at all times, but something like a compass or Uber, yeah, while using it, it makes sense that they know where I am and how I'm using it. Other things like IMDb, if you're familiar with that site, there's no reason they need to know that. If I'm looking up a movie theater, I can just put in my zip code and that's fine. And next slide. So tracking on Apple, you have the option now to opt out of tracking requests, which is a great thing. It's new, and before that, you had to go into each app and turn off tracking requests. And here's a tip I didn't put a slide in about, but when it comes to location services, a lot of us now are saying no, that's not acceptable. So you'll notice when you download an app, it'll ask so-and-so app, say Dunkin' Donuts, wants to use your Bluetooth. I don't know why I'm picking on Dunkin' Donuts. It says so-and-so wants to use your Bluetooth. That is to get around the location services thing. Bluetooth can also track your location. And unless you're pumping out the jams on the Dunkin' Donuts, speaker systems, you don't need to use Bluetooth for that app or for your Starbucks app or for dozens of others you have. So it's okay to turn that off. And when you're not using your phone for those things, it's okay to turn off your Wi-Fi and your Bluetooth. You know how easy they are to turn back on. And that also limits your privacy exposure, which is great. So the next, we're going to go over to Kim, and she's going to talk about some more stuff for you. I hope I wasn't going too fast or anything, but I had a lot of information to impart.
Thanks, Mark. So we're going to talk about a few other ways, steps you can take to protect yourself and your privacy. So of course, the first one, which many of you know about, which Mark touched on, is to secure your social media. Limit your sharing as much as possible. As fun as it is to take those little Facebook quizzes, the ones that they are, what was the name of your first pet, and all of these other little quizzes, and when you answer, then the next person answers, and so on and so forth. And they can be very fun, but they're really a way for people to gain information about you. And so out of taking a couple of quizzes, someone might learn your middle name, the street you live on, and the school you went to, and the name of your first pet. And so what use is all of that? Well, some of it is identity theft possibilities. Some of it is stealing your passwords by figuring out, a lot of people use the name of their first pet as a password. Oh, who would know the name of my first pet? Well, lots of people would, because you played that little quiz on Facebook and you gave everybody the name of your first pet. So we forget as time goes on what we've shared on social media. And so it's really important to pay attention to that. Also to really pay attention to not just the privacy settings, but who you're friending on these locations. Lots of times people will say, well, I'll see who else they're friends with. Oh, okay, well, they're friends with another friend of mine, so that's okay, I'll friend them. When that could be a fake profile. Your friend could have done the same thing and said, oh, well, they were friends with so-and-so, so I friended them, and so on and so forth, all the way down the line. And meanwhile, this is a fake profile. It's a person who's just on there gathering information or looking for a way to scam you. So really paying attention to securing your social media, setting your privacy settings to the highest level possible, allowing only those friends that you want to share information to see what you're doing, not the whole world, is a really important step that you should take. Oops, sorry about that. Okay, yeah. And then also in remaining secure, I know we touched upon this in the past, but always look for the lock symbol or the word secure, or HTTPS. The S stands for secure. Don't visit sites that don't have one of these, or if you are going to visit the site that has one of those, be aware. Don't purchase something from a site that doesn't have this, where you're putting in any personal information, credit card information. And again, being leery when you are purchasing something, try to use a credit card, not a debit card, or anything that links to any of your other accounts. Some people like to set up an account just for online purchases that doesn't link anywhere else. So always be cognizant of how many places you're entering your information in, and try not to have that be something that links to your bank accounts. Two-step authentication, also known as two-factor authentication, and you'll also see it as 2FA. I know we've touched upon this in the past. This is an important privacy feature. It takes seconds to set up. And when you set it up, you're basically telling that site, that bank, that app, that email, that when you are logging in that a code be sent to your, let's say, your cell phone as an extra added protection on top of your passcode, on top of your password. And that code comes through instantly, I mean, within seconds. So it doesn't slow you down in any way. And setting up 2FA is really simple. Just about every place. I'm sorry about that noise. Hold on one. Sorry about that. And so where was I? Okay, so two-factor authentication is really important. I know it's a hassle. Best to set it up every time you're going into each site so that you don't have to go backtrack 12 places that you now need to put your two-factor authentication. So instead of doing that, oh, I'll do it later, take the 2 minutes to do it at that moment, because before you know it, you've got so many things where you've gone ahead and said, oh, I'll get to that. And you forget, we all forget. Sure. Okay. Oh, were you all able to hear me previous to that? Hello?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. So when I was just talking about two-factor authentication, you didn't hear me?
Yes, we got that.
Okay, yeah. Sorry. I don't know why my computer just froze there for a moment. Okay, so in thinking about two-factor authentication, one of the things you can do is visit 2fa.directory, and you can go into this site and you can check out all of the places that you might want to be putting your two-factor authentication on. And so, for example, this page will come up and you'll see health. And so if we click on that and we were to go, here we go. Okay, and we're going to go into that icon for health. You're going to see all of the different health things, everything from 23andMe up at the top, right, to CVS Caremark in the middle, and to your Fitbit down at the bottom. Well, all of these things contain a certain amount of health information and different levels. I mean, gosh, 23andMe's got your DNA. And so in there, you would see right under that column that says docs, you'll see a way where you can go in and just apply two-factor authentication. So if 23andMe is something that you have, CVS Caremark is something that you have a Fitbit, there are the instructions right there. Put the two-factor authentication on by clicking. Some of these do not have an easy click on to do your two-factor authentication. So for example, CVS Caremark doesn't have that little icon there to go in and do it really easily. However, you can do it by going into one of these other sites. So you could do it through Facebook, you could do it via email. You could do it through email. And so it gives you the different options for that site. So CVS Caremark and how to do it, 23andMe and how to do it. So this is just a good way to kind of backtrack and see what you might have already in progress that you have maybe not thought about and didn't end up putting that two-factor authentication on. And another great site to visit is Have I Been Pawned? This site can check your email or your phone to see if it's been used in a data breach. So you would just type in your email address into the space below. And here we used Mark as an example. So Mark put in his work email address. And in this case, oh, good news, no pawnage has been found. No breached accounts have been discovered on Mark B at cybercrimesupport.org. But let's say it did happen to you, because it happened to me with one of my personal email accounts. I had like 3 breaches. In this case, the sample we put in had 5 data breaches. So don't panic. You go click on that, and it's going to tell you where those data breaches were. Well, here we have Ticketfly, LinkedIn, data enrichment exposure from PDL customer, and then it gives you the little breakdown. And so what you would want to do at that point, let's say it was your LinkedIn, or let's say it was your Facebook account, I would go in and I would change my email, change my password immediately, because that password has been breached in some way, has been compromised in some way. So you go in, you change the password, and while you're in there, add that two-factor authentication. So just to go back a little bit, and we'll share these slides. It's very simple. You go to haveibeenpawned.com. You type in your email address. It's going to tell you, yay, good news, or it's going to tell you where those data breaches were. You just go in and address it. And you can do that as many times as you want, and it's free. Other good things to do, thinking about passwords, how good are passwords, not using passwords from anything you've shared on social media or something that somebody might figure out about you easily. Maybe on social media, I post lots of pictures of birds outside my window, and oh, she likes birds, and my password was cardinal. Well, that was pretty easy for somebody to figure out because I like birds and I got a picture of a cardinal on my Facebook page. So, hey, or, I've got my dog on my Facebook page and his name is, Sam, and, there's an easy password to find out, etc. So you can put in your passwords into this secure site and just check how strong is your password. And so we did that. And we put in password 1. A lot of people use password 1, and it tells you your password would be cracked instantly. And then it suggests, you try a robo form to create your password. But lots of things that you can do if you don't want to, have a robot create your password for you or have a site create your password for you is to use a phrase that maybe no one else would think about, At one time, I used the little blue Christmas tree because one year I used a little blue Christmas tree as a decoration. So nobody would guess the little blue Christmas tree. And I made it stronger. Wherever there was an E, I made the E the number 3. So the little, and it was 3, blue Christmas tree. And they made it a little bit hotter. I put an exclamation point at the end. And so you can do something like that in your passphrase, changing letters and numbers around. And so we tried a real password of Mark's, not showing it, but we tried a real password of Mark's, and it says it would take a computer about 500 septillion years to crack the password that Mark is using. So that's a really great password. So I just thought, this is an interesting site. And even if you didn't want to put in your actual password, but you wanted to put in some things that you were thinking about, a few samples to see how strong they were, it's a great little site to use. And other things to help you learn more about privacy or go to when you think you're being scammed or have been a victim of a scam of some sort. And I know we may have covered this before, but we're always changing things on our website. So we like to always bring it up again to remind you of where to go and what's available on there. If you are an individual or a small business, you can just click on what you see here. I'm an individual and I need help with, or if it has something to do with your business, I'm a small business and I need help with. You click on that and you'll see some community resources on there, resources specific for military and veteran community, resources for children, teens, and young adults, resources for older adults and caregivers. And before I go on to the next slide about our website, I did want to mention what Helen brought up at the beginning. We do see a lot of scamming with older adults. I know we've talked about romance scams and other type of imposter scams, you've won lottery scams, and they do tend to target older adults because older adults are generally sitting on a nest egg, retirement money, have steady monthly checks coming in, they have good credit, they may have room in their house to take out an equity line or the ability to take out a loan because they have good credit, do a reverse mortgage. And so they're targeted a lot for that reason. And so we don't often think of young adults as being targeted a lot because we figure, wow, they're so tech savvy, they know what they're doing. But they're tech savvy and they're out there doing a lot with their smartphones and their MacBooks. But they're not necessarily cyber safe. So tech savvy and cyber safe are not always the same thing. And so young adults, while they have less dollars to lose, are losing faster because they're taking more chances when they're out there. They want to, download all of those apps. They want to play all those games. They want to shop online. They want to share on social media. And so they are being targeted in record numbers. And so back to the I'm an individual I need help with, I'm a small business I need help with. Once you select one of those, it's going to set you up on this page. Here we see a few of the examples of things that you might need help with. Financial and purchase scams, hacked account or a hacked phone, imposter scams, identity theft, cyberbullying harassment, small business incidents, etc. It goes down and drills down from there. And it tells you, where to report depending on what you've selected. If it's a dating site, if it's Facebook, and this links you right to where you need to report. So it's complete with hyperlinks, including the FBI IC3 form. In some cases, it's going to link you to the FTC, depending on what cybercrime you have questions on. It's going to give you those options for recovery. In this case, contacting your credit reporting agencies. So here you have the 3 major reporting agencies. Not everybody knows which ones they should contact. And not everyone knows that it's very easy to put a temporary freeze on your credit and to lift it. It takes about 30 seconds to put on and to lift. And so this takes you right to where you need to go to do those things or to just receive a free copy. We're also running 3 big programs right now, our military and veteran community program. So if you or someone or a client is in the military or in the veteran community, they do have some very unique cyber safety issues. For example, identity being stolen when they're overseas, identity being used in romance scams. We also have something for the cyber at risk, which we're launching soon. This is for people who are less tech savvy. And we, through volunteers, we assist the person directly in putting 4 secure things on their phones and devices. So one of them would be 2-factor authentication. One would be privacy settings on social media. Assuring that they have good and not repeated passwords. And so we have someone paired up with them to help them walk them through the process. And then, as you all know, we have our romance scam survivors peer support program, which I've told you about in the past. We have finished our first group and are midway through our second group. And I just thought you might all want to hear very briefly about how well that went. The first group, to see them from the intake call where they were afraid to go back online again. They were afraid to trust anyone. They didn't have great cyber safety practices, and they didn't have good tech skills. And to see them progress from there to about, midway through our peer support group, where they began, really opening up about what had transpired with them, really began practicing the cyber safety and the privacy information we had given them, and actually giving us some great pointers in the process, to the end where they kind of graduated and went out and moved on with their life from the emotional and financial impact that they had from that romance scam, and knowing when they left, feeling it, in my heart that they were going to be safe out there. It was just a great success to see them move through that first group, and so glad that we are on our second group now. Other great information to stay safe online, to make sure your privacy settings are up to code. We've got some easy cleanup checklists available on our website that takes you through the process of some of the things that you can be doing right now. And then we've got a lot of other great information on there under our resource library. Please check it out. They're all in PDF form. Download them, share them with clients, family, friends. Put these up on your social media. These are great tips, little tip sheets for people. And we also have this great little short video, 5 immediate action steps you can take if your social media account is hacked. This is a short little 1-minute video also available on our website, and you can share it and download it. And what resources do we recommend? Obviously, we've got a lot of information on fightcybercrime.org. Annualcreditreport.com is a great place to just check out your credit report, make sure that there's nothing phishing going on there. IC3.gov to report any internet crime. Identity Theft Resource Center is a great site if your identity has been stolen, or you suspect your identity has been stolen. They answer the phone and they walk you through the process. So if you would like some personal assistance, you want to talk to somebody, they are a partner of ours. They do a great job. Federal Trade Commission also has wonderful information, and the AARP Fraud Watch Network has a wealth of information, including some victim stories, videos, and things that that are free to watch and very informational. And so thank you for your time today, and we are happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. So you can either raise your hand or put a question in the chat. And as people are doing that, I just wanted to share one thing. I was talking to a friend one day who never watches reality TV, couldn't even tell you what reality TV is. And I mentioned that I'd watched 90 Day Fiance the night before. The next day, he started getting advertisements for 90 Day Fiance, you know, so these phones, so much. As she was talking, I wondered if you go into, say, Dunkin' Donuts and you use their free Wi-Fi, are you putting yourself at risk there?
That's a great question. Yes. Anytime you use free Wi-Fi, especially the airport or a hotel, your signal is viewable to anybody who's using that network. So we recommend using what's called a VPN, a virtual private network. And I have one on my phone, and it works like an app. You just turn it on and off. And what it does is bounces your signal, your connection to a server somewhere else, whether it's out of the country or some other part of the country. So it clouds what you're doing, so people can't see you checking your banking or checking your email. VPNs do a good one, cost money, but they're only about $4 or $5 a month. And if you travel a lot or you use a lot of public Wi-Fi, I think it's a top-notch investment.
Yeah, just for a plug for NASW New Jersey, we've got what we call a private practice in a box, where you can get secure phones, secure computers, and also VPN. And I'm not sure whether we can just supply you with the VPN or not, but that's something that I can check out. Mark, somebody asked a question via the chat about iPhones secure, and you replied, but I wondered if you'd just do your reply verbally.
Sure. The question is about the security of iPhones. Are they possible to hack? And unfortunately, nothing is impossible. People find a way in. Sometimes it'll come in through an app you downloaded, which would have malware on it. So it gets around the Apple security service. But they just released a very important security update. Apparently, there was some sort of hitch where people can get into your system and put software on your computer just through your text messaging, whether you opened it up or not. So all they had to do is send you a text. So if you have an iPhone, an iPad, a Mac, make sure you hit the security updates as soon as possible. But by and large, they're a lot more secure than Android, because Android uses a shared code where all developers kind of build on the same code, where Apple doesn't share its proprietary information, so it's a little harder to crack.
Yeah, and also try to close out your windows when you're not using them, especially if you've been on a banking site, or if you've been Googling stuff, and in a MacBook, you'll have like all of the tabs open at the top. Close out anything that's connecting to the internet when you're done for the night, even if you're not going to shut your MacBook down. close out your windows, don't leave things open. Even though iPhones and Macs are very secure, leaving that little open window is just never a good idea.
Yeah, and if you have clients that don't have home access and they're using maybe library computers or Wi-Fi hotspots, make sure that they also close out and log out of their accounts when they do so nobody, the next user doesn't come in and do something wrong. Right. Well, this is fun again. I always enjoy it, Helen. Oh, you're muted.
I learned something new from these webinars. You know, now I'm all worried because I things online now, and I even do it from my phone, which I never used to do. And I'm wondering if I should reconsider that.
The phone is actually has a lot more built-in security then there are a lot more ways into a desktop computer, but it's still safe. If you're shopping on something that has that HTTPS, that S means it's secured and scrambled, and it's got a little lock on the screen next to the address bar. That's always a good sign. If you're, a lot of mom and pop shops, independent sellers might not have that kind of encryption. So it's up to you to determine whether they're trustworthy and if their sites are secure. That's a gamble we take to help small business.
And
Yeah.
just remember to use your, your credit card as opposed to your debit card when you're buying something online like that. And when you're downloading apps on your iPhone, don't download stuff that's not in the app store. And also, when you're setting up your apps, your Walmart or your Target or wherever you're doing your shopping, make sure your password is good on there. Don't use the same password for, I'm just gonna, all of the pet stores that I shop from, it's all gonna be, my dog's name. No, bad idea.
All right.
So why should you use your credit card rather than your debit card?
So a couple of reasons. One is your debit card links to your accounts, right? So your checking account, your savings account. So it's where your money sits. A credit card is limited to that card. And credit cards, when there is a fraud, you tend to grab it and shut it down faster and have more of a response from that than, think about if your bank account got hacked through your debit card and it linked to your savings account, how much of that money is your bank going to give you back? It's just safer to use the credit card than it is the debit.
Okay.
Yeah, and plus you may have clients who are, financially insecure. And if they lose access to their bank account for a week or two, that could be devastating to people.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Somebody asked for the two-factor authentication. Your thoughts on having the code sent via text versus an authenticator?
Oh, there are a couple of thoughts on that, and I'll answer Valerie's question as well. The 2FA is applied to apps. Sometimes definitely your email should have it, and if you don't put it on everything, definitely put it on your bank account and your email, because those are your major uses and things that people are looking for. But if you go to 2fa.directory and you pick a topic, it'll tell you all kinds of sites and apps that use it. So there are too many for me to name, unfortunately. And the second part of that was what was that? I missed the second part.
Getting the authentication via text rather than authentic.
Yeah. There's something called an authenticator app. So my Gmail, it'll send it to an app, and I have to press yes, that's me. That apparently is safer than getting a text, because there are ways people can break into a text. But that's still safer than sending it, via email, because you're most likely trying to get into your email when you're doing this. But there are ways, there are rural areas of the country that don't have good cell service. So they might have to get it through another means like via email or via text instead of an app where the cell service is spotty and unreliable and they can't do it. So it depends on where you live and how comfortable you are with technology. But I use the text and I'm fine with it. Most of us aren't going to be susceptible to people with that kind of system. We're not the targets of those people by and large.
Okay. Jane asks, is there a way to scan the phone to check for malware?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think the iPhone does it automatically in the background. I don't know about Android phones though, unfortunately. But I assume there are probably, if you look at the big security agencies like McAfee and Malwarebytes and all that, they might have apps that do that work. And usually they have free versions that will do a scan. They definitely have that for the desktops.
Yeah, I know Malwarebytes has an app for the phone and
Yeah, and they're
It's
easy
not
to use.
automatic.
Well, you know, if something is fishy, if I go on Safari browser on my phone and there's a website that's suspicious, it'll tell me, and it will say, you know, proceed at your own risk, or it can tell that it's a bad site and it won't let me go on at all. So it does do stuff in the background that you don't have to do anything to. But in terms of each individual app having malware on it, that's a different story. Apple and Google are pretty strict with their rules of what apps can be on there. Google Android stores are a little more lax. Like I said, they have more shared code, but you know, read the reviews. Read if an app has 1 star or if it has no reviews and it looks a little weird, you might not want to download that because you don't want the damage done. But an app like, you know, I don't know, Uber Eats or something, that's so widely used and so well known that they're constantly updating their systems. And you'll get security systems that you'll see sometimes on a phone, it refreshing itself, each app, and that's them doing automatic updates. So they're sweeping it on your behalf, pretty much.
And if you do install something like a Malwarebytes, like Mark said, it is also working in the background. But if you feel at any time you want to just run a scan, which I do that on my MacBook, you know, every week or so, I just tap it and run the scan. It's done in less than 30 seconds. And it just makes me feel better that I ran the scan.
Yeah.
That popped up.
Lovely. Any more questions? And you'll be sending me a copy of the presentation, yeah, that I can share with everyone.
Absolutely, yeah, and all the links in there should be clickable too, even in the PDF.
Excellent, excellent.
Yeah. All right, you guys always have such great questions.
Well, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure. Like I said, I learned something new when I talk with you. I changed my email passcode when you had yeah, now it's a sentence, and it, like Kim said, you know, all different symbols in it, and it's fun. But you know what? I've had to write it down and put it on my wall because I forget it, which I guess negates the whole.
Just don't point the camera at it. Just don't point the camera at it. You'll be okay.
So, well, if nobody's got any questions, we are going to give you back 8 minutes of your day. I hope you enjoy it. And thank you so much, Kim and Mark. Always a pleasure.
Bye, everybody. Thanks a lot.
Take care. Bye-bye.